There are nights so quiet that one can almost hear the rhythm of their own heart. Night descends upon a small village nestled in a valley, where gentle hills have stood unchanged through countless seasons. The moonlight spreads its silver glow over old tiled roofs, over trees trembling softly in the breeze, and over stone paths that have borne the steps of generations. The air is cool and pure, inviting one to release every worry and simply listen to the slow, steady breath of the universe. In a modest wooden house at the edge of the village, a woman sits silently by the open window. A small oil lamp casts a dim golden glow, flickering as if it were swaying to the wind. Resting on her arm is an old book, its pages yellowed with age. She opens it carefully, as though she might awaken a dream still lingering there. Between the fragile pages lies a dried rose pressed with gentle hands long ago. The petals, though darkened with time, still hold their delicate shape. That rose is not merely a keepsake. It is a fragment of time, a doorway into days long past. Whenever she gazes upon it, she hears distant laughter again, sees the shining eyes of a young man, feels the warmth of a hand that once held hers beneath the blooming roses. Many years have passed, yet the rose remains, a quiet testament to a love that never truly faded. Outside, the wind drifts softly through the garden, carrying with it a faint fragrance of blossoms. The chorus of night insects rises, a gentle lullaby for the world. The stillness deepens, drawing the woman further into her memories. Together, these sounds and silences weave into a slow, tender song, guiding any listener toward a realm where reality and dream become one. Tonight, as on so many nights before, she opens the book, gazes at the faded rose, and whispers within her heart, "This is the rose he left behind." Just those words alone are enough to make her heart tremble, as if the love from long ago still breathes within her every sigh. And so, the story begins. A story not only of a rose, not only of a love, but of the endurance of memory, and the quiet beauty of things that may pass, yet never vanish. There are memories that never leave us. They are not loud nor overwhelming, but rest quietly in a corner of the heart, like a small candle that has never been extinguished. And whenever we grow still enough, that little flame flickers to life, illuminating a path long faded into mist. She remembered it well, those days when youth was brimming with life, when each morning felt like the whole world was open before her. In that small village, time seemed to move more slowly, and joy was simpler, gentler than what people elsewhere might seek. There was a rose garden at the southern edge of the village, where every summer it bloomed in radiant splendor. The young man would often take her there, and together they would sit beneath the trellis of flowers, sharing little stories. Sometimes it was nothing more than a dewdrop resting on a petal, the call of a bird, or sunlight slipping through the leaves. Yet each moment brought laughter, followed by silences so deep that words seemed unnecessary. The fragrance of roses from those days lingered in her memory. It was sweet, tender, never overpowering. It floated gently like a breath, like a whisper. Each time the wind stirred, that fragrance filled the air, and the young girl she once was would fall silent, as though the whole world had dissolved, leaving only the boy before her and the gentle curve of his smile. He did not speak much, nor did he make many promises, but his eyes always lit up whenever they met hers. In those eyes lay a softness, a trust, a quiet assurance that calmed her heart. Once he plucked a rose, placed it carefully in her hand, and whispered, "Keep this, to remember that you will always have a place in my heart." That rose, vivid and red, was the beginning of everything. She had treasured it as though it were a precious jewel, pressing it between the pages of her book, as if to preserve a moment she never wished to let slip away. Those days drifted by slowly, sweet as a summer song. Mornings spent in the fields, afternoons resting beneath the shade of trees, evenings wandering by the stream. Each instant seemed ordinary then, yet in memory they sparkled like drops of sunlight through the branches. There were times when they simply sat in silence, listening to the rustle of leaves overhead. But even in that silence there was a closeness no words could ever capture. Youth, though fleeting, can be achingly beautiful. They did not know that those peaceful days would soon pass. They only lived fully in each moment, gazing into each other's eyes with trust, allowing time to drift on like the quiet waters of the village stream. One autumn evening, beneath a golden sky that bathed the rose garden in light, he sat beside her and asked softly, "If one day I must leave, will you remember me?" She only smiled gently without a word and held the rose in her hand a little tighter. In that silence they both understood some answers did not need to be spoken aloud, for the heart had long whispered them in its own language. And tonight, as she sat by the window, gazing at the faded rose pressed between the pages of her book, it felt as though she were once again walking into that summer long ago. The laughter, the eyes, the fragrance, all of it returned so vividly that she almost believed she could reach out and touch the past. Those memories, though carried across countless years, remained intact. They had become the small candle that warmed her heart through the long solitary nights. Time never stands still. No matter how sweet and gentle the days of youth may be, the current of life quietly carries everything away. One misty winter morning, along the dirt road that led out of the village, he stood there with an old bag slung across his shoulder. His eyes were bright yet deeper than she had ever seen. He told her he had to leave, to step beyond the familiar valley in search of a wider future, or perhaps because of duties no man could turn away from. She had been too young then to fully understand the weight in his gaze. Yet she remembered his voice with perfect clarity, low and steady, as if each word had been measured carefully before it was spoken. "I will return. I promise I will return." The rose pressed within her book became the echo of that promise. It was like a thin thread tied around her heart, so that every time she looked upon it, she knew that somewhere in the world, someone still thought of her. The day he left, the sky itself seemed wrapped in gray. No bright sunlight, only slow-moving clouds drifting across. She stood at the edge of the village, watching his figure grow smaller until it disappeared beyond the trees. Each step he took felt as though it pressed upon her tender heart, leaving behind spaces that could never be filled. In the days that followed, life in the village continued as though nothing had changed. The sun still rose, the rain still fell, the roses in the garden still bloomed. Yet to her, the world had grown unfamiliar. No one sat by the trellis telling quiet stories. No warm hand reached for hers beneath the leaves. On afternoons, she still went to the garden, still sat in their usual spot. But beside her there was only silence. At night, she often opened her book, her fingers brushing against the rose that slowly withered with the years. Its petals had lost their bright red hue, but in their fading they had become steadfast, resilient. A quiet proof that love does not vanish, but changes its form to endure. Time moved on. Month after month, season after season. There were letters from him at first, short, yet filled with tenderness. She read them until the words imprinted themselves upon her memory, before placing them carefully in a small wooden box. But eventually, the letters came less often, until one day, there were no more at all. People in the village began to whisper. Some said he had found a new life elsewhere. Some claimed he could never return. But she believed none of it, except the promise he had spoken long ago. Through the long years, she held fast to that memory, like holding onto a small lamp in the dark, hoping its light would be enough to guide him home. There were nights when she sat by the window, listening to the wind pass through the garden, imagining familiar footsteps approaching along the narrow path. There were mornings in the fields when she lifted her eyes, searching for a figure among strangers. But always the answer was silence. The rose remained within the pages of her book. Time had dried it, but she believed the love inside was still alive. It became the thread linking past to present, joining two hearts though separated by endless distance. That parting had not been a violent storm, but more like a long, steady rain. It did not crash nor roar, but soaked quietly into every stone, every corner of her heart. It changed everything, tinting the days that followed with a different hue. And within that stillness, she learned patience. She learned to listen, and she learned to let memory become a refuge for her soul. The years slipped away, like petals falling softly to the earth. Each season arrived, each season departed, leaving behind subtle traces that only those who listened patiently could perceive. The woman still lived in her small house on the edge of the village. Her hair had long turned silver with time, yet her figure by the window, quietly gazing into the rose garden, remained unchanged. The garden bloomed each summer, its fragrance rising with every breeze. The roses, fresh and radiant, seemed to remind her that life continued, no matter how her heart lingered on the past. Many times, she opened the old book and looked at the dried rose pressed between its pages. Fragile now, it could crumble with the slightest touch, yet in her eyes, it was as beautiful as the day it was first placed there. Each darkened petal was like a shard of memory, fossilized and eternal in the flow of time. On moonlit nights, she would sit in the garden, listening to the wind weaving through the trees. The rustling leaves played a gentle song, and in those moments, she felt as though he was still near, watching her quietly from some distant realm. She smiled faintly, placed her hand upon the book, and let her heart drift into memory. The days cycled endlessly. In the village, children grew up, the old passed on, and new homes rose from the ground. Everything changed in its own rhythm. Yet her rose garden remained, a silent witness to the past. Each blooming season, villagers paused to admire the blossoms, praising their beauty. She would only smile softly, keeping silent, for to her, the roses were not mere flowers, but living memories. Sometimes in the early morning, she walked into the garden where dew clung to the petals and sunlight barely touched the earth. Breathing deeply, she drew the fragrance into her chest. In that fleeting moment, time seemed to stop, and youth returned, gentle as a dream. Through the long years, she learned acceptance. Acceptance that he might never return. Acceptance that the promise of long ago might have been swallowed by time. Yet this no longer brought her pain. Instead, it softened the memory, turning it into a quiet river flowing beneath the surface, unseen, unboastful, yet nourishing all that was beautiful within her. In the wooden drawer by the corner of her room, the old box of letters still rested. The pages had yellowed, the ink faded with age, but she never once thought of discarding them. Each time she opened the box, the scent of old paper mingled with memory, carrying her back to distant days. She read the words again, her heart swelling with sweetness and sorrow entwined. When she closed the box, she returned gently to the present, a present of peace and simplicity, where she found comfort in small things, a warm cup of tea, a glowing sunset, a newly blossomed rose. And so, the seasons of roses passed light as breath. Her longing no longer pierced like a blade, but became a thin mist settling around her heart. It made her spirit softer, deeper, like soil washed clean by rain, ready to welcome whatever life would bring. In that stillness, she came to see, love, once it touches the heart, never truly disappears. It only changes its form, hiding beneath the folds of time, waiting for a touch to awaken it again, shining. Like moonlight scattered across a garden of roses. One late autumn afternoon, the sky was tinted a pale gold. Sunlight slanted across the narrow road leading into the village, covering the world in a veil of light as thin as silk. The last leaves of the season drifted down, spinning gently before settling on the dry ground. The old woman walked slowly through her garden, a small bamboo basket in her hand, gathering the roses that had just begun to bloom. She never imagined that, on this quiet day, a small encounter would arrive. one that would stir the stillness of her heart. As she bent to pick a rose, footsteps echoed along the path outside her gate. It had been so long since she had heard the sound of a stranger pausing before her old house. Looking up, she saw a young man standing there. His stance carried weariness, his coat dusted from the road, his dark eyes holding the weight of a long journey. He stopped before the gate, his gaze lingering on the rose garden. A faint smile touched his lips, a smile both unfamiliar and strangely familiar. Something in his eyes made her heart tremble. "Madam," his voice was hoarse, like wind lost among the trees. "Is this the house where once lived a man who left long ago?" The woman froze. For a heartbeat, her chest felt still, as if time had stopped. She tightened her grip around the basket, then slowly nodded. "Yes," she whispered, her voice quivering. "Do you know of him?" The young man hesitated, his eyes softening as though he were carefully choosing words, lest he shatter something fragile. "I was not a close acquaintance, but my father often spoke of a friend, a man who carried in his heart the image of a woman from this village. My father kept a dried rose in an old notebook, and before he passed, he asked me, if ever I could, to return it to the one who once waited for him." The woman stood silent. In her misted eyes, the past rushed back. She saw again the day she sent him off, the old book with the rose she had given. Could it be that rose had been kept close to him for all his life, and now it had returned to her through the hands of his son? The young man opened a worn leather satchel and drew out a notebook. Its pages had yellowed, the corners frayed. He opened it, and there, pressed between its leaves, lay a fragile rose, so brittle that even a breath might scatter it to dust. With trembling hands, she received it. Her vision blurred. Whether from age or the tears welling in her eyes, she could not tell. For an instant, she felt as though he stood before her once more. The young man with the gentle smile, the warm hands, and the promise left unfinished. "He kept it until the very end?" she asked, her voice breaking. The young man nodded softly. "Yes, my father always said. There was a place and a woman who had guarded the gentlest part of his heart." Silence settled over them. Only the wind whispered through the roses, stirring memories. She pressed the brittle flower to her chest, listening to the beat of her heart, as though two rivers of time had finally met. In that moment, she no longer felt her lifetime of waiting was in vain. Instead, she understood that love had never been lost. It had been cherished, carried, and at last returned, completing its circle in peace. The young man sat with her in the garden. Their words were few, but enough to let the fragments of memory find their place. She told him of her youth, of the days of waiting, of the rose garden that had become her living diary. He listened, his eyes shining with quiet understanding, as if through her stories he had discovered a hidden part of his father. The sun sank behind the distant hills. Golden light spread across the garden, making the roses blaze in one final glow before surrendering to the night. The woman gazed at them, her heart warmed. She realized that some promises need not be fulfilled in the way they were spoken, for the very act of keeping them alive had already proven the depth of love. The dried rose in her hand was no longer only a relic of the past. It had become a thread binding two generations, two lives, two hearts moved by the same simple truth: love, unfeigned and true. That night, when all was quiet again, she sat by the window, watching her roses bathed in the light of the young moon. Her heart felt peaceful in a way it had not known for many years. No bitterness, no regret, only the quiet faith that love, no matter how many seasons it must pass through, always finds its way home. Time flowed on, quiet as a river. In the days that followed the meeting, the old woman felt lighter than ever before. It was as if an invisible door had finally opened, releasing her from the endless waiting and longing of a lifetime. Each morning she still walked into her rose garden, but her gaze was different now. No longer the restless look of someone yearning, but the gentle, peaceful eyes of a soul who knew that love never truly disappears. The dried rose, returned at last, was placed in a small wooden frame and hung upon her wall. She no longer feared its fragility, for she understood that its true worth was not in its delicate petals, but in the long journey it had endured, the journey that bound two hearts together, across time and distance. The young man sometimes returned to visit her. They would sit on the porch together, sharing fragments of memory. He spoke of his childhood, of how his father would sometimes take out the old notebook with the pressed rose inside, gazing at it quietly, his eyes distant and tender, as though speaking to a past no one else could reach. She listened, her heart trembling with warmth. Not sorrow now, but a gentle tide of love. One winter evening, snow drifted softly across the valley. A small oil lamp cast a golden glow inside the house. The woman sat alone, a wool shawl around her shoulders, gazing through the window at the starlit sky. She thought of him, the man who had gone, the one who had kept his promise in his own way. She smiled and closed her eyes. In her imagination, she was walking through the rose garden, but not alone. He was there, holding her hand, strolling along the familiar paths. The air was filled with fragrance, the wind sang a gentle song, and every trace of loneliness melted away. The next morning, they found her seated by the window, her face serene as if she had fallen into a long, sweet sleep. In her hands she still held the wooden frame with the dried rose, and the faint smile upon her lips told all who saw her that she had departed in peace. In the village, she was remembered as the woman who had devoted her life to guarding a love that never faded. Her rose garden became a place where people often came, not only to admire the blossoms, but also to listen to the story of a promise of waiting and of a love that endured beyond time. The young man, in later years, became the caretaker of the garden. He changed little, only ensuring that the roses continued to bloom and perfume the air. And each time he saw them swaying in the wind, he remembered his father, the old woman with the gentle eyes, and the truth they had both proven, that beauty can endure. The years passed, and the garden still bloomed, season after season of roses. Villagers often said that when the wind moved through the petals, they could hear the faint echo of an old song, the song of waiting, of faithfulness and of final peace, somewhere far away. Under moonlight and across the vastness of the universe, perhaps the two souls had found each other again. No more parting, no unfinished promises, only reunion, eternal and tender as the light that falls upon a garden of roses. And so the story ends, not with tears, but with stillness. With a quiet reminder that true love never dies. It may sleep within a heart for a lifetime, it may hide inside fragile keepsakes, but in the end, it will always find its way home.